Cross-border transactions are complex ecosystems, but the entire regulatory path of a deal is often determined by a single critical node: instrument classification. Imagine a foreign investor wires $2 million into an Indian startup. The funds arrive in the same bank account from the same investor on the exact same day. But the legal paper backing that wire dictates two completely different realities. If the company issues a compulsorily convertible preference share, or CCPS, the investment flows seamlessly into the foreign direct investment framework. If they issue an optionally convertible share, the transaction is instantly routed into the rigid framework of foreign debt. Under FEMA, what the parties intended commercially holds no weight. The precise structural terms written into the instrument dictate the reporting forms, the compliance obligations, and the legal consequences of the deal. This split is established by the SEMA non-debt instrument rules, which divide all cross-border investments into two categories. On one side, non-debt instruments, governed by NDI rules. On the other, debt instruments, governed by ECB regulations. To qualify as non-debt, an instrument must be fully and mandatorily convertible into equity. But if the contract allows the investor to strategically hold back even a single fraction of the conversion, or gives them the choice to demand their cash back, the instrument fails. Instruments like optionally convertible debentures or preference shares drop straight into the debt category. Inserting a single word of optionality into the conversion mechanics traps the entire transaction in strict ECB compliance, bringing with it mandatory reporting and rigid all-in cost ceilings. Investors naturally want an exit strategy. FEMA does allow equity instruments to include a put option, giving the investor the right to sell their shares back to the company, but only within tightly defined boundaries. The first boundary is time. The optionality clause is only valid if it enforces a minimum lock-in period of at least 1 year from the date of allotment. The second boundary is valuation. When the investor finally exits, they must do so at the fair market value determined at that exact moment. They take on the economic risk. If the term sheet promises a predetermined floor, like 1.2 times the original investment, the instrument violates the condition, and FEMA immediately recharacterizes it as debt. Foreign investors must make a clear choice. They cannot engineer the absolute downside protection of a guaranteed return while maintaining the regulatory freedom of an equity instrument. There is exactly one statutory exception to this strict equity-debt divide, and it is reserved exclusively for registered Indian startups issuing a convertible note. A startup can issue a note that acts like debt initially and converts later, provided the investment is at least 25 lakh rupees in a single tranche, and the note either converts or is repaid within a maximum 10-year window. Outside of the startup world, listed companies face their own absolute threshold. Here, the critical metric is 10% of the post-issue paid-up equity capital on a fully diluted basis. Crossing that 10% line triggers an automatic regulatory shift. Stay below it, and it's foreign portfolio investment. Hit 10% or higher, it becomes foreign direct investment, completely altering the reporting mechanics. Understanding these fault lines allows you to accurately classify instruments as non-debt or debt before a single piece of the investment structure is formalized. You can sequence the compliance tests for equity instruments, verifying optionality clauses and confirming that the no assured return rules are satisfied. And you can recognize the exact moment a contract's wording triggers ECB consequences or requires FPI analysis. Mastering these classification triggers removes the guesswork from cross-border deals. It ensures you dictate the regulatory path, giving you complete control over the transaction, rather than the transaction controlling you.